Welcome to Engineering Success Podcast, and this is your host Himanshu. And today I have a very special guest with me. I'm talking to Hunter Powers, the man with more than 20 plus years of experience in tech, and man, he has seen the entire journey. And you know what? He was thrown into his first coding class at the age of 3. Well, I'm not gonna reveal too much. Let's jump right into the conversation.
Awesome. Excited to have this conversation today.
Our audience, we could hear from you what your journey has been like.
You want a little bit of that origin story. That's when I'm interviewing candidates, I often ask them, what's your origin story? How'd you get here?
Yes.
For me, I've been a lifelong technologist. They first threw me into a programming class when I was 3 years old. And of course, you can barely, if you even at all, read and write at 3 years old. What in the world are you doing in a programming class? But we were on some old Apple IIs, and it was Logo, the scripting language. And the teacher had printed out these scripts, and we would basically copy them from the script into Logo, which would make the turtle move around the screen, the colors change on the screen, and graphics appear. And I would get into competitions with my friends on who could build the longest, sort of most interesting animation. And I always say that was the moment when I was hooked. And I've been hooked ever since then. It's never stopped. That sort of absolute love for technology, for automation, for engineering, for programming. And it continued to develop ever since then. When I was around 12 years old, I built a little startup which got some notice, and I ended up on a show called Good Morning Carolina, which was like the North Carolina version of Good Morning America. And it was after the show, the weatherman came over and said, hey, I'm working on this other startup. It's called Surf Checks. It still exists today, where we're going to put cameras on all the beaches so that surfers can come, they can check out the waves, we'll monetize it with ads, we'll build some other features. Is that something that you'd be capable of working on? So I think I was 13 at this point. I was like, yes. And he's like, great, I want to hire you to come work for us. And at that time, I was literally the only engineer. There was one engineer that worked before. I was the new engineer. And I would stay there for the next, I think it was close to 3 years. They paid me $200 a week, which when you're 13 years old was just infinite money. I didn't know why anyone would ever need more than $200 a week. And I built most of their infrastructure and maybe some things that are still running today. But it's ever since that point that I've been working for startups and growth stage companies now well over 20 years. I've had pretty much every position in the engineering context. I've been an associate engineer, a mid-level engineer, a senior engineer. I've been a back-end engineer, a front-end engineer, a team lead, a manager of engineering, a director of engineering, a VP of engineering, a CTO, a VP of machine learning, a senior vice president of engineering, all the positions over those 20 plus years now. The last 10 of those 20 years have been focused heavily in leadership. And the last 6-ish of those 10 years have been focused more and more on AI. So at the highest level, there's the Hunter origin story.
You've seen it all. Is there anything that you haven't done? I usually ask this question towards the end of the podcast to my guests, but I think I can start with this one. I want to start with this question with you. How do engineering leaders get a seat at the business table, at the decision-making table? Because for a long period of time, engineering was seen as a support function. Engineering was never the business. Software engineering was enabling different businesses. But now that happens to be at the core of the businesses.
There's never one answer. So what's the generic one? It depends. The easiest way is that they get asked because the company has determined there's a need. We don't know how to navigate these waters ahead, and we need someone from engineering to help inform us and represent us, etc. And they invite you to the table. But let's just assume that's not the case. Your question is, how do I get a seat? And there's no one saying, please come and sit with us and have a conversation. And I think the answer there, and the answer throughout my career has been, you've got to meet them where they're at. You've got to meet them on the business side of things and start thinking about things through the business angle. How they're concerned with the business health of the organization and the sales that they're making and the marketing opportunities that they're making and what the customers are saying back to them. How are they handling all of this? And in a most traditional stereotypical role, engineers are just focused on, is the software running and building the new features? And the rest of it, they don't think too much about it. So the degree to which you can go into their world and express the engineering within those terms, within how it's going to impact the business, how it's going to enable new sales, how it's going to make our customers happier, how it's going to increase efficiencies at the company, these are the things that resonate with them. At the same time, have a willingness to have the same responsibilities that they have. Right? Someone on the sales team gets fired or promoted based on the actual fiscal health of the company, how many sales are going through. In engineering, by default, we have, again, protection against this. We are allowed to exist in a bubble, and it's a really nice bubble where, again, we can write code and our tests pass, and we built the feature that was asked of us. We can pat ourselves on the back and give ourselves a promotion. We don't have to test ourselves against the real world nearly as much. And so when you go into those contexts, if you can first, again, position yourself within the world that they exist, and the business realities, and how you can potentially have a positive impact on those, and then be willing to accept the same responsibilities that they have about the health of the overall company, you tend to get embraced with open arms, because most people aren't doing that. Why would you?
Yeah, now the trend is changing now with so many big giants laying off and the whole.
Yeah.
I think the leverage that engineers had a couple of years ago, they don't hold that anymore. So how do you think the whole situation for an engineer, for the engineering team, is now going to change, or how's the future now going to look like for those teams?
So your question is, as business resources become more scarce, and maybe there's an AI component of it as well,
yes,
perhaps the power of the average engineer diminishes, and so does that decrease the probability of you getting a seat at the table? And if so, how can you try to offset that? Is that where we're going?
Yes.
I think as an engineer, so there's a whole new opportunity as an engineer, which I don't know, every engineer, in my opinion, should be trying to stay at the forefront. Unless you're specializing in some esoteric language that doesn't exist anymore, and that's your niche, and you just stay there and find your jobs there. You, as an engineer, have to always keep learning and understanding what's coming next, and really sinking into it. If you want to be at the top of the game, there's an opportunity to just exist. But if you want to be at the top of your game, you've got to always be learning. And so right now it is this AI revolution as enabled by transformers, that there basically is no company in any sector that isn't embracing it to some degree. And everybody wants to embrace it more because I guess that's what the market's telling them, and a belief that there is opportunity there. But the companies, they don't know what to do. You thought they were behind before in understanding like how things actually worked and what's actually possible and how it could actually be built. They're wildly out of their league now. And even more of the company, I find that product departments tend to be far behind because they don't have a background in this technology. So designing product experiences for their customers, for the company, it's lacking. And as engineers, especially engineers who've been staying up and playing with this technology and understand it deeply, if you can figure out how to bring that knowledge and communicate it with the rest of the team, there's huge opportunities there, and figuring out how to leverage it. And again, you're really asking yourselves, like, how can I make sure that I am still a really valuable part of this company? Will it affect some people negatively? And is it affecting some people negatively? Yes. But is there a way to diminish the probability of that? Yes, too. Are there guarantees? No, there aren't any guarantees. But it's also a huge opportunity that you should be taking advantage of to try to stay at the forefront and bring that knowledge and inspiration and potentially business context. There's more opportunity now than ever before. And I don't think there's a lot of people that would disagree with that.
So for someone who is watching this right now, maybe trying to get into think in terms of the business relevance for what they're doing, how does an engineer develop that business relevance, or how do you develop that business acumen as an engineer? Do you have any insights or anything that our viewers could take away and probably apply?
One way is by talking with the people on that side of the house and understanding what are they working on and what are their problems, and trying to think about how you might apply technology to fixing those issues. I would say that the average engineer is pretty good at, you bring them a problem that you're having and thinking through, okay, what would I do here? Some things that engineers are really good at, but they don't always get acknowledged at, and they don't always realize it. So one is abstract thinking. We tend to be really good at it because we're often given these super loose requirements, and there's no defined path to build something. And maybe it's never even really built before, but we have to go and think about how can we put something together, something brand new, bring it into this world. And we have to do it in these iterative stages and have to forecast for when we're going to get it done, even though it's never actually been done like this before. So we're really good at abstract thinking. And I also think we're really good at, so another thing that we don't get acknowledged for, and people don't immediately say, we're really good at managing risk. People tend to think, and I think engineers themselves think of themselves usually as very conservative around their risk management. I want to manage everything very tightly, and it's got to be very controlled and neat. But the reality is that, again, they're working in such an abstract construct of building this software that they've actually developed incredible risk management skills. And how do I manage all of these different pieces, and how do I write my test cases and ensure that things go this way, that they're able to bring those skills to the other side. So go have conversations with the other side and understand the challenges and the problems that they're trying to solve. They tend to be super happy to talk with you because no one from engineering ever comes over and actually just says, hey, what are you working on? Tell me about it. What are the problems? I'd love to sit in on a customer call sometime and just hear what our customers are saying, what they're asking for. Oh, can I watch some of those sales calls? No one ever asked them that. And by the way, they're often boring, but you can get access to this information. The opportunity exists. So start there in understanding what are the actual asks and thinking through, okay, what are the solutions that we could potentially bring to the table? You don't need to actually develop anything. You just need to think through those solutions. Then take those solutions and have a conversation about, if we could do this, would that be something meaningful? Would that move the needle? Yes or no? And if no, okay, then let me adjust. And to some degree, you're doing product discovery, product development work at that time in that piece. But I would suggest that most engineers are capable of that. Again, maybe they want to work on their communication skills and their presentation skills so that they can effectively communicate what they already know, but they have it in them.
I do see that, especially now when the team, you've been at startup, that the team size is shrinking now. Now you see like $1 million, $1 billion companies and built by only 10 engineers or a total of 15 people team.
Yeah.
There, the scope of interaction is way more. And nowadays, I'm hearing those conversations, seeing people around talking about it. On that note, you've spent about 2 decades, a little over 2 decades in engineering. Has the dynamics of forming the right team or creating the team changed? Let's say 15 years ago as an engineering leader, what you were looking for in your team and what an engineering leader might look for now. Has it changed in any way?
Remote has changed a lot. And I think managing a remote team is different than managing a team that's in person, and how you build that sense of team and the personality that thrives in a remote environment and the personality that thrives in an office environment aren't necessarily the same person. So that's definitely an evolution. As far as the degree to which someone needs to be a jack of all trades or just focused narrowly in their space, I don't think that's shifted dramatically. I guess the understanding of the engineering in the rest of the organization has overall increased. So it's less like you're talking a foreign language. And even things, so I talked about how the rest of the organization doesn't understand AI at all and how it's actually working, but they all do understand ChatGPT, right? They get that. So their ability to mock up and prototype experiences has increased substantially. But as far as forming teams and stuff, I think that perhaps my strategies have shifted from experience, but I don't think they've shifted so much from cultural changes over the years. I think the strategy that thrives today as far as building a team isn't all that different. And basically, how do you identify the people that are going to deliver the highest quality product in the shortest amount of time for the best cost, if we define that as the business outcome that we're trying to achieve, and be the happiest employees. So we're going to keep them there for a sustained period, again, so that the business sustains and thrives. Those goals aren't different. Sometimes money runs freer, and those are different times where I've been at companies raising $1 billion valuations where you close a $200 million round and they just come in and say, double the organization. We need to double it. And it's more about doubling it than anything else. than what they're actually doing. It's just about securing those engineering resources. And so like that's a different activity. And so those times exist versus I'm just trying to make the most efficient team. And we're closer to the efficient team right now. And inevitably we'll shift back towards build, grow.
Yeah, this is a trend that we have seen in the last few years. You get money, the first thing your investors want you to do is, hey, show me some growth, get me some more people around. Otherwise, how do you progress? But yeah, in that the whole workload distribution sometimes becomes uneven, and at times you see a lot of them may not even have projects, or they're simply there. They're just there as head counts. There's not a lot of value that you're deriving out of them.
There used to be a thing they would say that every engineer you added to your team added $1 million in valuation. This was an idea that was popular probably like 10 years ago. And it was just something that was said. I don't know that it was actually there. But as a company, you're trying to build shareholder value. So this is the other, again, the business side of things. When you're trying to understand what's really going on here, we're trying to build the best business possible. And we're trying to make our customers as happy as possible. We're trying to build the best product possible. And all these things, if you can build the best company and the best product, you will inevitably build the most shareholder value. But oftentimes, especially in startups, you're really focused on that valuation. What is the exit strategy and how are we going to achieve it? And it's not always, I want to build the most efficient engineering team in order to achieve the highest valuation, especially in a short period of time. And so adding the resources to the company does increase the valuation when they're doing what they call a 409 evaluation. 409A evaluations, right? So every year a startup will have an independent authority come in and determine the current valuation of the company. And you want to see that going up over time so that you can attract increased investing interest and potentially one day go public or be acquired as part of your exit strategy so that your investors get paid off. That has to be the goal of the CEO, is to maximize the shareholder equity. So that's what the company is trying to do. And one strategy to do that is building up a team. And sometimes they don't yet know how they're going to leverage that team. But that's the opportunity for the engineering leader. You shouldn't, as an engineering leader, sit around and say, I got all these people and don't have anything to do. Hey, company, can you please come up with some more things for us to do? No, you should figure out things for them to do. Whether you have your own, there's a bunch of technical debt, or we need to refactor this, or we're going to work on being able to scale out these services because we think that's coming down the road, or I'm going and actually having those conversations with the other departments to try to do the product discovery work, assuming I don't have a rich backlog coming from the product department of things that we want to build out. But understanding those dynamics and why it might be valuable to scale an organization at almost any cost in certain economic conditions, which we are not in today. But when money is effectively free, it can be beneficial to the company's valuation to build at almost any cost.
So in all of this ambiguity, how do you think about driving performance versus maintaining a healthy culture, healthy engineering culture also? And maybe if you could also talk about what is a healthy engineering culture. I've heard different definitions from different people, but in your understanding, what is a good, thriving, healthy engineering culture?
I often think about culture in terms of engagement. And I think it's just because I find engagement an easier thing to examine than culture. So if I have a highly engaged workforce, therefore I must have a good culture. So what is a high degree of engagement? And then we can discuss what experiences and resources allow you to get to that point of having a highly engaged workforce. There's author's name's Daniel Pink. He has a book called Drive. It's a good book. And he has a framework in there for autonomy, mastery, and purpose. These three components being the elements of engagement. And the book is about the context of work, although I believe you can also apply these to life. So autonomy is you having a high degree of say in what you're actually doing and how you do it. So in an engineering context, I have a voice in the projects that I'm working on. So I get to some point, you know what, I really would like to, hey, next quarter, could I work on this team? Or I'd like to transition from being in the front end into the back end, or I'm really interested in AI, or how we build this. So there are several engineering teams, and we get to figure out what our standards are as a team, and we get to figure out what technologies that we adopt. We have a high degree of autonomy. The second part is mastery. So I need to feel like I am becoming a better, more skilled individual over time. And the degree to which I can articulate that, the degree to which I experience mastery. When I think back to myself 6 months ago, here are the things that I wasn't quite as good at as I am now, or the experiences that I've had that are going to enable me to achieve my goals in the future. In the engineering context and engineers, I find that we don't think about it a lot. Like we're doing it, but we don't stop to think, what did I learn over the last 6 months? And even if it was like a horrible time and there were fires, I had to work on Saturdays, the product requirements were horrible, we missed a sales goal, it's just been super stressful. But when you stop and think about all those experiences that I've had and how they're going to better enable me when I come up to them again, because they're not going to be these foreign things. I know exactly how this is going to play out. I'm never going to make that mistake again. I'm going to put a test in place here. You've actually learned a whole bunch and you've grown as an individual. There's a lot of mastery there. So calling that out and understanding that. And then the last one is purpose. The understanding that the work that I'm doing actually matters. It is making an impact somewhere. No one likes throwaway work, or I work on some feature for a really long time and it never actually ships and we build 5 versions of it and nothing ever happens. Or I feel like you're just like making up work because you don't have anything defined. It has to be meaningful. And in a broader context, this also goes to the product vision or the company vision. Something that I often find lacking in organizations is a compelling product vision. What is this future that we are moving towards? And the more compelling it can be, the more that it can pull me forward. Like, I want to be there. I want to build that. I want to live in the reality that you're putting in front of me. The more motivated I'm going to be to make it happen. So these are the 3 components that we want to have be really high. We want to have a high degree of autonomy, a high degree of mastery, and a high degree of purpose. And so then it's about creating an environment that's conducive to enabling your engineers to achieve these things, not forcing it down on them, because then that wouldn't be autonomy, but explaining to them, hey, here are these 3 things. If you achieve these, you'll probably find that you have an incredibly high degree of engagement. Let's understand where you are in these elements. And then let me show you how you can increase them. And if you increase them, you're going to find that you enjoy everything a whole lot more. And as I noted, again, in the book Drive, it's really about the workplace. But do you ever feel like you're stuck in life?
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest that one of these elements, autonomy, you feel like I don't have any control over my time. There's just, I've got all these things that I have to do, a list. And if you can figure out how you can have more control and say in what you're doing, mastery, I feel like I'm just stuck in life and nothing's happening. Let me take a moment to think about those negative experiences, and perhaps there's an opportunity to reframe them and learn from them, but also let me get more opportunities to increase my skill sets, and maybe not related to my work. Maybe it's outside of work, but I feel more engaged. And then last thing, purpose. Like, why am I doing all of this? Well, what's the point of life? If you can solve the meaning of life, perhaps you'll be a slightly more engaged person.
Yeah.
What is a good culture? For me, so I deploy that framework, make sure that everyone understands this, and then engage in conversation about it. I think the culture evolves over time and evolves with the people that are working there. And I want I don't want to install my ideal culture on a workforce. I want to understand the people that are working there and work with them to define what is an ideal culture for us as individuals. And that's also part of like how I like to work. I don't like someone to come in and again tell me this is how you must do everything. And that I want them to say, here's our goal. Here's where we're trying to go. You have complete authority to figure out how you want to get there. However, if you're ever stuck, I'm there for you. And I'm happy. If you don't know what to do, I'll lay it out for you. I'll give you a plan. Here's your default plan. If you feel stuck, come to me. We'll talk through it. I'll give you 5 ideas. If you want me to just choose for you, I'll choose for you. But it's your decision.
I think, so what you're saying, it's about giving them an opportunity to perform.
Yes.
At the same time, I'm creating those avenues for them to really experiment with things and being okay with not knowing, because that gets you sometimes. Like, you don't know whom to ask. Should I be asking? What would they think of me? So you do get questions like that. And the role of an engineer and the role of the leader here in the organization becomes really important. I really love the point where you said that, when you're there in the team as a leader, understanding their culture, it's not about me going there and setting up ground rules that, okay, from tomorrow, this is how we're going to be, is really interesting. I think we do talk about empathy in this whole space a lot, but what
Yeah.
it really means is really sometimes it gets confusing. And the way you have put it up right now makes it really more comprehensive and easy for all of us to understand what that is.
Yeah, when I was first in an engineering leadership position, one of the pieces of constructive criticism that I received was, Hunter, you're trying to make everyone else exactly like you, but you're a little crazy. Overachiever, work nights and weekends, over deliver on everything, and everyone's not you. And I now think it's not about trying to make everyone be a version of you as the leader. You're not trying to craft everyone in your image. What you're trying to do is build the best version of each of those individuals, and understanding that. That's what you're there to help them achieve. And then it's either good enough or it's not. But that's separate. You as an individual, where are your strengths? Where are your weaknesses? How can we build it up? What's your level of engagement? How much work do you want to put in? And creating opportunities for people who do want to go super deep and achieve, but also opportunities for having a good work-life balance, which I think was something you're perhaps touching on a little bit. I try to create an environment where you can work your 40-hour work week. You can go home and completely ignore, turn off Slack, not check your emails, and be successful at the company. But I often also tell people, even during the interview process, that said, if you want to be the fastest person to ever climb the ladder, to go from being an associate engineer to being a director of engineering, it's unlikely that you will accomplish that if you only do this.
Yes.
Again, you can be very successful. You can have your life, balance, be very healthy, and you'll get your annual reviews, but you're probably not going to be the fastest person to ever climb the ladder. And that's a choice that you have and you could make. And I think some people try to pretend that choice doesn't exist. Or there are some that would suggest that it's just a really unhealthy choice. And so you shouldn't, that by having that opportunity or the autonomy to say, that's what I love. I am a workaholic. It's the thing that I love. I love the technology. If the jobs didn't exist, if I couldn't work in an engineering position, it already is what I do on the weekends. Like, I would just do it. And so that's me, but that doesn't have to be everyone.
That's so much like me. I know, like, whether it's a weekend or weekday, it doesn't really matter. I love what I'm doing it. But the other point which you said, that there's this whole talk about work-life debate for years now.
Yeah.
I've always had some different opinion about it, that I think this whole debate is wrong. I think everything is life and work is a part of it. Why do I need to make work and life as two different things? I know they're talking about family and other components, but I think we do this all the time in different situation, different point of life. You had different priorities, you're doing different things. And yeah, it's a very individual thing to do. You decide for yourself what is it that you want to do.
Yeah. I also think there are different stages of life. Yeah. What matters to you changes as you move through life. And so at times your work and building a career is the most important. And at times your family is most important. And at times just having that sort of complete autonomy to do whatever you want is most important. And so you change, but you should have the I'm suggest that it's good to have the opportunities so that you can you're in the driver's seat. You can choose. If what you want to do is just do a lot of partying, great, do a lot of partying. And as long as you meet this bar, you're fine. If what you want to do is just is focus on your family and have all those experiences and do that, excellent. You have the opportunity and a path to do that. And if what you want to do is just invest your whole self in your work all the time, yeah, you can do that too.
Yeah, that's on you. So talking about these changes, you've seen the full spectrum from being an associate. I don't know, what do I call a 12-year-old engineer? You were doing your own startup. You were technically not an associate. It was your own thing. What really surprised you when you moved higher up in the ladder from an IC position to moving to from a senior manager to a VP and to director? How did that play out for you?
Yeah. Up until director, it was a linear growth in the amount of responsibility that you have and the clear. So your success in your role the amount of things that you're responsible for grew linearly and was clearly defined. Once you start moving into what most people refer to as executive positions, the amount of responsibility that you have, I would suggest, grows exponentially.
Mhm.
And the definition of success becomes far more vague. So you find yourself with more things than anyone could possibly do. And you have to identify which are the actual top priorities. Where can I delegate? What should I work on? And you could be completely successful in all the things that you work on and have complete alignment that these are the most important things to work on, and yet still be deemed a failure because of things that are outside of your control. Or maybe they aren't outside of the control. Again, like the overall health of the company. As an executive, you're really there to support the entire company and the engineering team, whereas before you're just focused in this role inside of engineering. So overnight, when you go from director of engineering to VP of engineering, the amount of responsibility that you have more than 10x's, or at least that's what I experienced and has held true through a lot of different positions. So becoming comfortable with having all of that on your shoulders. And initially it's crushing, but then it becomes normal. And again, you also, we talked before about that. You're really good at thinking in the abstract and identifying what's the most important and breaking up the work and delivering things iteratively and leveraging all those skills that you have from an engineering context to bring, we'll call it, unparalleled velocity to this new position that I'd suggest the other executives don't have as much experience with. I'll also note here, I'm an incredibly biased person in that, like, I think engineers are God's gift to earth. I think they're the best employees. I think an engineer could probably do almost every position at a company better. Sometimes gets me in trouble, like this line of thought, but I just admit it and then roll with it and try to be respectful of everyone. But yeah, if engineers ran finance, maybe it would run a little bit better. If engineers ran marketing, maybe it would run a little bit better.
I'll totally vouch for that. This is what I usually tell people. I've got humanities by degree. I'm an engineer by the way I do things. Because at some point in my life, I do realize that if you really want to create anything, you have to be an engineer. You might not know the language, but as long as what you want to build, you can always find people around you who would be willing to do that for you. And that's as much as an engineer than anybody who can code.
Yes.
What do you think would be the role of AI now when it comes to two things? The individual contributors, the individual developers, how is it going to impact them? And how is AI going to shape the leadership now in terms of principles or technology? What kind of change can we expect because of AI?
So starting with the engineers, I believe and have experienced AI making far more productive engineers. If you leverage all of the tooling that is available to you today, starting with something like a Copilot, it absolutely can increase your productivity or decrease the amount of time that it takes to deliver a new feature. In the pursuit of engineers having autonomy, I'm not a fan of mandating anyone, we now have to leverage these AI tools or these AI models in order to accomplish your work better, faster. However, what I tell people is you are going to be judged against the people that are using these tools. Again, I don't actually care, and I don't mean that in a flippant way, but I want you to have the control of how you do your work. You don't want to use any AI tooling in order to write your code, build your features, deliver your functionality. I have no problem with that. But as an organization, we are going to allow these tools, and I'd suggest that the people that embrace them the most are going to see the biggest gains. And I'll put you on alert, watch out, and you need to make sure that you can continue to be judged favorably against them. And I would suggest that most engineers are embracing this tooling. There's definitely holdouts and people that think, I write substantially better code than any of these tools are generating. And there's some truth to that, and that it's just a distraction. But I think that's becoming an increasingly hard argument to make. And as the technology continues to rapidly evolve in the quality of the code that it's generating and the speed at which it's generating and the applications of agents, whether they're reviewing code reviews or suggesting, hey, here's how you could increase the performance of this code, or here's a potential security issue with this code. to try and suggest that we would be better off without it is a diminishing and, in my opinion, losing argument. However, I will allow you to make that argument and take that stand, because I don't necessarily have to. I don't have to take an official position there.
Yeah.
We're going to manage the engineering workforce as a whole, and the engineering workforce will decide what makes them the most performant.
So I think as an organization, we have to ensure that they have the tools, but whether you want to use the tool or not it's on you.
I have, and I do know CTOs that are mandating the use of the tools, and I understand that argument too, because they're like, hey, these tools are a productivity enhancer. You are an engineer on this team. Like, I'm going to mandate that you embrace these things and level up your abilities, because if you don't, you're going to find yourself caught in the rear winds. That just doesn't happen to be my style, where I prioritize autonomy above all else and assume that the system works itself out. But I do understand that argument of perhaps you should mandate them. Now, in some situations, there are concerns and restrictions that have to be worked through. I worked in a top secret cleared facility. There was a lot of concerns over us leveraging this tooling in that position. And so we had to work. And this also took a lot from engineering, and work with the rest of the company to develop policies and understanding all the legal ramifications and understanding where the data was going. How could it be transmitted securely? Do we need to run local models where we can guarantee things don't leave our network, etc.? So my point is that there are legitimate reasons to say that we're not yet at a space where we can adopt this technology as an organization, but they're dwindling. And then you asked, like, how is it impacting the rest of the company?
Yeah, in terms of leadership, how do you see it helping or not helping, or its role in enabling engineering leaders?
Its role in enabling engineering leaders outside of potentially enabling you to deliver new experiences to customers, but just focused on that, like the management part. And how does AI potentially make you a better engineering leader? And I was looking at your platform before this podcast as well.
Okay, I'll come to that.
Yeah, we can talk about that. I have some thoughts. So the tools like which your company works on that provide some degree of metrics or analytics around what engineers are working on, they, in my experience, they don't tell you that an engineer is performing or is not performing, or that there's an issue here, there isn't an issue here, but they point a spotlight on something for you as the engineering leader to go in and investigate and understand the context. The context is everything. Yeah. They used to say, no one's ever going to lose a pizza party because of a metric being wrong somewhere. But I am going to stop and go and take a look and understand, because it appears that you haven't committed any code. Let's take the biggest one. There's been no commits over the last week. As an engineering leader, I should probably know that. And as an engineering leader, I should know why. And there's 100 really good reasons. Maybe you were in conversations with the product team working on a new strategy and everyone's super supportive. That's completely fine. Maybe you were out sick. Maybe you've been leveling up the rest of the team on the technology, and there's been actually, got to look at the commits of the team as a whole. It's way up this week. And that's just because you were reviewing everyone else's and focused on that. So there's a million good reasons. And so those tools help you focus your time and make more efficient use of your time. So if we imagine the application of AI to that, it could potentially identify more opportunities or better opportunities for you to spend your time understanding the context and addressing the issues. And perhaps it comes closer to understanding the context, or it gets more context out for you to, again, make the return on your time investment. I talked again, like when you're a VP, you have 10 times more work than you can actually get done. You got to figure out what it is you're going to do. How do I choose the correct things to work on? And I think that there's an opportunity for AI to make you more efficient in the use of your time. Just as an engineer writing code, it can potentially make me more efficient in the code that I am writing.
I think, yeah, that's one thing that AI has done. To simply put it, you now have a better throughput when you do things. More things are getting processed in that limited amount of time, and now you're taking better decisions. Hunter, I'm almost out of my question. That's all I had for you today. But I do want to ask something more.
Sure.
A lot of books behind you. These are books, right? Or these are video games.
No, they're books. There's a lot of books.
There's a books. Yeah, you've been so busy, of course, doing so many things, spending so much time with engineering. When did you usually do you find time to read books? And what kind of books do you really enjoy reading?
Yes, I find so you have to find time to keep learning. If you want to be as successful as you can, and I would just suggest that it's in general a good idea, no matter what your profession is, to keep learning, to keep being engaged. Again, I suggested that mastery is a very important part of engagement in general, whether it's at your job or in your life. And so finding those opportunities, if you can, are important, and we'll find that you have more engagement with everything. At times, when I was getting into more leadership, I focused a lot on business books like Daniel Pink's Drive. I talked about that book. It's a good book. It's a simple book. Go out and read that book. There's a lot of business books, and that's one way you ask the question of like, how as an engineer do I start understanding all these sort of business concepts and how they're thinking and how I might be able to apply my skill set to these areas. Great news. There are tons of books that are published, and I would also suggest that most people aren't reading them. Go into that part of your organization. It's doubtful that they've read all those books. So you can, books in general are condensed information. If it's a good book, you can consume that condensed information, think through the applications, go in and have a conversation where you come off as highly proficient because you do have the key pieces of information and you have a way of communicating it or expressing it in a neat way as informed by your reading. So there's a lot of technology books. There's a lot of business books, a little bit of philosophy, and then at one point I was writing screenplays. So there's some screenplay stuff up there as well.
Awesome. Could you recommend 3 books for people who are watching?
Yes. We'll start with the Daniel Pink Drive. Then we'll do the one. Sorry, I'm looking up The One Thing, which is by Gary Keller. And then a really good engineering management book. What was that one called? The Coaching Habit.
The Coaching Habit.
The Coaching Habit is a book that I often recommend to new engineering managers. It's the first time that you have people reporting to you. It's a short book and it's full of very direct, actionable advice. Like, here's something specific that you can try. Here's a script that you can borrow to apply to your next one-on-one, and how you can start having more coaching conversations versus mentoring conversations. One of my frustrations with a lot of books is there's a lot of nonsense in them, right? Like, just get to the point and tell me the things that I can take and apply. And The Coaching Habit's a great example of that. So Drive by Daniel Pink, The One Thing, The One Thing is about how, given all of the things you could possibly work on, how do you identify the one thing that I could focus on that's going to have the most returns? And then finally, The Coaching Habit, which is how can I bring up the people that are reporting into me? There you go, 3 books.
Thank you so much for those recommendations.
I also do a podcast. It's focused on AI, and I co-host the podcast. It's called They Might Be Self-Aware. It's a little tongue-in-cheek. You can find it on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. Yeah, check that out if you want to hear some ramblings on the AI world.
The link in the description for that.
Awesome.
Yeah. Good. Thank you so much, Hunter. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
That's all for today on the Engineering Success Podcast. Thank you so much for being with us. Stay tuned for more.